I'm Dessa Bergen-Cico. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Public Health in Syracuse University, and I work in the field of addictions. I got involved in this work through my connections with Noble, Arnett, and Sandy, and in listening to them describe some of the factors behind the recidivism for getting re-engaged in street violence, gang activity. It was very similar to behavioral addictions. And so when we looked at some of what was being described by the participants and connected it with other things that we consider sometimes to be sort of thrill-seeking behavior, activities that activate the dopaminergic cycle in the brain, there was an exact sort of layover and replica that was very socially specific to people who...
Speak.
My name is Timothy Jennings-Bey. I'm the director for the trauma response team at the United Way in the city of Syracuse. Years ago, I was taking a class at Arnett Community College called Alcohol and Group Work with Professor Shaw, and it was highlighting addictions and the process, how people become addicted to alcohol. While in that class, something triggered in my brain because of my past experiences with the gang culture and the street life, that I had those same symptoms.
My name is Arnett Haygood-El. I work for Southwest Community Center in various capacities. One of my bigger capacities working with youth. I have 15 years experience working with at-risk youth, 17 to 21-year-olds, gang intervention, and also recently working with the trauma response team on a volunteer basis.
This is Sandra D, and I'm a professor of public health at Syracuse University, and I've worked with community members for about 15 years now on various aspects. So Dessa and I met with Noble and Arnett, and they had this idea that the draw of the street was in some way exciting and maybe even potentially addicting. They were developing a whole lot of work based on the fact that they had both worked for years, a couple of decades maybe, each, case management workers with people who were at risk of incarceration or had been incarcerated. And a lot of those folks were gang members. And so they wanted us to work with them. Dessa ended up teaching them how to do qualitative research. And then they did this absolutely brilliant study with a number of ex-gang members. And when we started talking about it, we realized that there was literally nothing like this in the literature.
I looked at it, I kind of looked at it out of my life, being a victim of gun violence and to some point a perpetrator and definitely a witness.
What we began to see emerging were parallels between what the participants were describing and other forms of behavioral addictions. As we hear often with gamblers, it was external stressors would often be a cue that would drive them to be in action. It was also quite fascinating to hear the participants describe levels of tolerance to violence that they were willing to engage in over time. There's also a characteristic loss of control over their criminal behavior and chasing losses for criminal activity that had not gone well. There was a mental preoccupation with planning for the next criminal activity, ruminating over past criminal activity. Guns provided a particularly intense sensory trigger for these individuals to re-engage. The sound of gunfire would escalate sort of the adrenaline rush for these individuals. The calculated use of stimulant drugs to prepare the individuals to engage in crime and violence was also an emerging theme. The use of SHRM and PCP was very prevalent in this particular community where the study was conducted. The resilience and resourcefulness of the individuals affected by street addiction was very admirable. More than a year after we concluded our research, we began to see evidence from individuals involved in gang activity describing it as an addiction, like this article from the UK. The Criminal Gang Members Anonymous 12-Step program has been in existence for over 10 years. The lived experience of criminals and gang members cannot be ignored, and their resourcefulness and ways of finding recovery should help to inform the field. It's important to note that although these individuals are perpetrators of violence, they were first victims of violence, and this is not an excuse but should be factored into their recovery.